What is up, fellow creators? Cody McCarty here with Explore Travel Capture, here to review the Canon 100-500 RF lens. Now, before we get into this review, I do want to thank Lens Rentals for making this video possible and for providing you guys with a discount of 15% using the code ETC15 at checkout. For this review, we took the 100-500 paired with the R5 to Katmai National Park in Alaska, where we really got to push this lens to its limits. I don't know if you know about Alaska, but the weather is highly unpredictable, and we really got to test the weather sealing of this lens with dumping rain and no rain cover. Now, unfortunately, the copy of the 100-500 that I had didn't hold up. I don't know if this is because it was a rental copy or a production issue, or if this is just generally how it is. Now, mind you, it was heavy rain and we were standing out there for hours, so that could have been a contributing factor, especially with no rain cover. But when you're shooting wildlife, weather is always going to be a variable, and you need to know that this lens is going to work. So the issue that I ran into this lens is moisture somehow got inside. Humidity was building up on the internal lens elements. Not on the back, not on the front, but internally. It took a while for it to dry out, and it did affect image quality, which I think is unacceptable in situations where you're photographing a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Now, I typically bring a rain cover. I just forgot to bring it to Alaska. So this will probably be a non-issue for you guys, but I did want to give you guys my experience with it. Now, in Alaska, we were there to photograph and film coastal brown bears, some of the largest bears in the world. In this situation, the 100-500 proved to be more than enough to capture frame-filling bear photos. Sometimes it was a little too tight at the 500 end. Now, this lens is a 100-500 with a variable aperture of 4.5 to 7.1. Let's talk about that for a minute. Traditionally, a 100-400 is a 4.5 to 5.6, being 5.6 at the 400 end. Unfortunately, with the 100-500 lens, it quickly becomes a 6.3 at the 360mm mark. Then it becomes a 7.1 at about 450 millimeters. I don't know the exact amount, but those extra stops of light lost do make a big difference when you're trying to capture the action. Because of this isn't a lens I would recommend if you're trying to get into wildlife. I would much rather you adapt the 150-600 Sigma lens, because the image quality, which we'll get into in a minute, is very, very close. And it maxes at a 6.3 aperture and has 100 millimeters extra of reach compared to the 100-500. Now, as for weather sealing, I don't think the 150-600 quite has the same weather sealing as the 100-500, but as I mentioned, it didn't hold up as great as I wanted it to. If you're looking to get a little bit more compact, the 100-500 is slightly shorter, but it's taking up almost the same exact space in my bag as the 150-600. Now let's get into image quality. Most lenses nowadays are great, especially Canon L series lenses. This 100-500 is no exception. It is plenty sharp, especially on that R5. It produces a great image. There's not much more to say on this. If I punch into these images, they're super sharp. I am benefiting from the extra 45 megapixels of the R5. Honestly, the fact that I'm able to get this kind of sharpness of this lens is good. Now, when it comes to the autofocus on the 100-500, I am very happy to say that the motor's kept up great. It's snappy, it locked on, especially in video. It stayed on my subjects. In photo, I didn't have back focusing issues even when it got really dark and gloomy when it was raining. So I'm very happy about that. Autofocus wise, performs great. I didn't quite get to test this with birds in flight. I did see a bald eagle when I was there, and I tried to photograph it, but honestly, I just was too distracted by the beautiful bears, so I didn't test it as much as I should have for birds in flight. Now let's talk about image stabilization. This lens has some of the best image stabilization in a telephoto lens. That's one reason to choose it over the 150-600 that I recommended over this. The image stabilization paired with the R5's in-body image stabilization produced a very usable image in this 4K 120 clip of a mama bear catching fish for her cubs. You do see micro jitters in the footage, but it's still very usable. You strap this thing on a monopod, and I'd say you'd eliminate pretty much almost all of those micro jitters. Now let's get into the price. This lens is $2,500. You can find a Sigma 150 to 600 used for as cheap as $800. You factor in the $100 adapter, and you're still saving $1,600 if you choose to go that route. This lens is made for professionals. If you're a hobbyist wildlife photographer, I definitely recommend that 150 to 600 over the 100 to 500. Even if you're a professional, that 150 to 600 is just great. But from my experience with this lens, I would much rather get that Sigma lens. And I know I keep repeating myself. If you guys really do want to consider getting this lens, use Lens Rentals and use that discount code ETC15 to try out the lens before you get it. And let me know what you guys think. If you have any other questions, just ask them down below. We'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. We have a ton of exciting reviews coming out, as well as an in-depth one of the R5 at Katmai. So be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you get notified every time. And if you guys are already subscribed, leave a comment and let me know what you think of the set. We're playing with it a little bit and going for a different look. Now, this isn't your typical review. We're trying to change it up. We're trying to give you the perspective of professionals who use this equipment in the field. So ask your questions. Let us know what you'd like to see in future reviews. I think that's about it. I'll see you guys in the next video.